Thereafter, last night, one match in the Premier League, and it was Newcastle, Simon, who swept past a very sorry Leicester City and edged back towards the Champions League. Simon, where do you stand on this? We'll hear from Eddie in a second. Eddie Howe, of course, ecstatic about another 3 points, but ending a 70-year trophy wait or getting Newcastle back to Europe's top table amidst a mid-order rise, what do you think would be Eddie's standout achievement from this season?
Winning the League Cup, I suspect, because it banishes the demons that have been so much around. But they can have both. They can have both. They've got the momentum to get both.
Yeah.
They've been in a rich vein of form. Whether the League Cup gives them that extra pep in their step, the extra confidence, or the monkey off their back, or whatever you want to say, they've got good players. And so with that in mind, they've got a good coach. You know, over the years, my attitude towards Eddie Howe has changed, and rightly so. And of course, it culminated in me actually spending some time with him. And I think he's a thoroughly decent fellow and deserves all the successes he's going to get.
Yeah.
But I think they can have both. So I think if they can compound the League Cup win with an appearance in the Champions League, they'll be better equipped for it next year than they were the first time round, because they're going into a new format and they've seen the beneficiaries of that have been other clubs that would have not necessarily thrived the way that they did if that format had been the same one that Newcastle competed in. So
Absolutely.
I think it will be a real stepping stone. I still maintain the view that Eddie Howe won't carry them to the Premier League. I hope he does, because I'm not suggesting that this is a diminishing aspect. The opportunity
to winning the Premier League.
Well, that's
to winning the Champions League.
I don't think that the Saudi Investment Fund, which owns it, which is a sovereign state fund, which is the nation state, which owns Newcastle, despite all the subterfuge, bought Newcastle to win the League Cup. They bought it, and you saw the biggest reveal in the emotional outburst from Amanda Staveley, which was, we've lost this League Cup final, but we will be back. We'll win this cup. We'll win the FA Cup. We'll win the Premier League. We'll get the Champions League. So to do that, they're going to have either a significant change in the rules, or allow Eddie to develop this football club over a 5, 6, 7 year period. And I'm not sure anybody gets that time in football anymore.
No. Sure thing. Very one-sided affair last night at Leicester, and Newcastle won it convincingly. And now, the race towards a Champions League qualification. Newcastle are in it, very much in it. This was Eddie.
I think it's important, but the club will exist if we don't get there. But I think there's a real desire from everyone internally, players most importantly, to try and get there. We've got some really tough fixtures to come. The next week will be pivotal for us. 3 games in 6 days against 3 tough opponents. So that's going to be a big week. And we certainly, I think, off reflection of today and Brentford, we're going to need to play better than we have in those games if we want to win the matches coming up.
You see, I like that. It was so one-sided, the whole affair, Simon. But at the end of it all, Eddie never gives it, I'm totally happy. And I like that.
Well, that is
There's more to come. There's more to come.
But that is the winning mentality. That's the nature of ambition. If you stop and look around, sometimes people say you've got to smell the coffee, or watch the world go by. But in the nature of ambition, you've got to keep pushing forwards. You've got to keep evolving, got to keep moving forward, because there's nothing you can't learn, and there's no ultimate outcome. You have to keep progressing. Certainly as a club like Newcastle, who are trying to eat up the ground like some sort of Pac-Man mentality of eating up the opposition and getting to the point where they are now established and stabilised in the Champions League, so they can get those revenues that can give them the opportunity to bridge the gap between the 350 million that they will generate and the 500 million that a Tottenham will generate, and a 600 million that the Manchester Uniteds, and a 700 million that the Man Cities all have in their back pocket right now, alongside Arsenal and their turnovers, that give them an opportunity to buy bigger, have bigger wages, and keep on evolving. And that's the place that Newcastle have got to get to. And that's why he has to have that look. Because we also know that you give people comfort.
Yeah.
They'll be comfortable.
Sure. It's a nasty one, but I'm going to ask it. Ivan Juric at Southampton, now gone. He left yesterday. 2 wins in 16, 13 defeats. Ruud van Nistelrooy, Newcastle's opponents last night, Leicester. 3 wins and 16 defeats. Of the two of them, is it nip and tuck for the worst managerial appointment of the season?
No, I think they can both have that, but for different reasons. I think that Ruud van Nistelrooy was a strange appointment, only gotten and given because of the 3 or 4 games he managed at Manchester United, which was like picking up something that was so broken because of the toxicity around Ten Hag, media base, fan base, whatever else, that there was always going to be a bump when a legend came in, and that shouldn't have been a blueprint for being given a job. I know that we spoke to the Dutch journalist that we both like, who was very complimentary about Van Nistelrooy and what he's likely to achieve, but the statistics are glaring for Ruud. From goals conceded to goals scored to points achieved, everything has been decimated. He's halved the amount of goals scored per game that they were getting under the previous manager, which is perplexing given the fact he's a forward. He's doubled the goal, or certainly given it a 50% ratio on the amount of goals that they've got. Every statistic, points have gone from a point a game to a half a point a game. But the Jurek appointment to me just made no... I mean, there seemed to be some feeling of sense around the reasons why Van Nistelrooy might get this little bump out of them because of the culture of the individual. But Jurek, to me, I felt the only reason this fella could have got a job is because he's from a similar part of the world as the owner.
As Dragon Solak. You said that from the word go, to be fair to you. So, I mean, we know that Jurek is not going to head to the Championship with Southampton. Leicester will be heading to the Championship. Should they head there with Van Nistelrooy?
For what reason? For either of them. I mean, Jurek has done them a favour. I suspect the fact that he had a contract which detailed he could go if they got relegated gives you all the insight you need to have. Because that was based upon an exit strategy. Maybe it was both sides, maybe that's unfair. But he was not creating a culture at Southampton that vaguely resembled anything progressive. Van Nistelrooy the same. I can't see an argument as to what you'd be gaining, even though you've got behind the scenes gives you more insight. We see the Saturday afternoon. We don't see anything else. So we don't know if there's any progress anywhere else or there's good reasons why there's such struggles. But it's very difficult to suggest that either one of them is worth retaining. You can't decimate. Van Nistelrooy was brought in to perhaps save Leicester. I mean, there's a part of me, and people aren't going to like this, and I don't care. There's a part of me that suggests that Leicester should have already been consequence anyway, because they got around a 6-point penalty they shouldn't have gotten around. So there's part of me, mean-spirited karma, suggests they've got what they deserve in the end, and I'm sure that's going to cause outrage amongst the Leicester fans. But the fact of the matter is, I don't care. The fact of the matter is that neither one of those individuals did anything to change the direction of travel. They made it worse. So how can that be an argument to say, well, actually, that looks like the way forward?
But Simon, you're right. They made it worse. So was it not a case of, and I know it's easy with hindsight, better the devil you know, was it not a case that maybe Southampton should have stuck with Russell Martin? Is it not a case that Leicester should have stuck with Steve Cooper?
Well, it's an interesting one, because I think often as a manager that brings a club up from the Championship, you are more susceptible to losing your job quicker, because there's this dynamic that you haven't managed in the Premier League, perhaps, and ultimately you were good enough to get us out of the Championship, but you haven't got the chops to keep us in the Premier League. I also think there's certain attitudes that Russell Martin exhibited that might have been a little bit intransigent towards his owner and what his owner might have been suggesting. Now, with Steve Cooper, I think there's a different dynamic. I think the fans didn't want him, didn't fancy him. And I think he was always pushing water uphill to some extent.
Sure.
And there's been this backdrop of Leicester being quite critical of their managers over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 appointments, with maybe a slight period of time with Brendan where there wasn't. But they were very critical of a lot of the appointments over the years and the style of football. And Cooper was caught in that trap. So the fans were in part a great degree towards the reasons why the lever on the exit door was pushed on Cooper.
Simon, I've got to say, in terms of content, we are bursting at the seams this morning. A lot to get in. Incidentally, I stepped on the tube yesterday after yesterday's show. Randolph, I said I'd mention you. Huge fan of the show. Big fan of Simon's. Good morning to you. Thanks for all your lovely comments. When we come back, how much longer should Lucas Paqueta remain in limbo? It's Jim White and Simon Jordan live on talkSPORT with Selco. It's where the trade goes.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.